Now, we have learned that the fundamental truth of our being is the ever-present, ever-available presence of God. This is not a truth for the high days, for the moments of exalted prayer, or when we are gathered in a group such as this. No. It is a truth specifically for the moments when the clouds gather, when the winds howl, and the very foundations of our human experience seem to shake. The time of the problem, you see, is the very time to reach out, not to turn away. It is when the fire rages, when the floodwaters rise, when the hurricane of human circumstance threatens to sweep away all that we have built. It is in that very moment that the presence is most near, waiting not to be invoked from a far-off heaven, but to be recognized as the very substance of our being, here and now. The first thing we must realize, and we must realize it until it becomes the very breath we breathe, is that God is not a being apart from us, a monarch on a distant throne to whom we send frantic telegrams in our hour of need. That is the old theology, the theology of separation, and it is the source of all human suffering. The moment you believe God is there and you are here, you have created a gulf that your prayers, no matter how fervent, cannot truly bridge. But, my dear students, I am here to tell you that this gulf is an illusion. There is no separation. There is only one. There is only the infinite, indivisible is-ness, the I am, and your own individual consciousness is a localized expression of that very I am-ness. This is the rock upon which we build, the foundation that cannot be shaken. Now, let us turn our attention to the heart of our subject tonight. What happens when you truly understand why the Master Jesus said, I am? He did not say, I, Jesus of Nazareth, am. He said, I am. He was pointing to something beyond his personal, historical identity. He was revealing the very nature of his being, and in doing so, he was revealing the very nature of your being and mine. He was not speaking of the man Jesus. He was speaking of the Christ. And what is this Christ? We must be very clear on this point, for the mind will try to make an idol of it, a concept to be analyzed and dissected. The Christ is not the man Jesus. The Christ is the Spirit of God in man. It is the gentle presence, the still small voice that speaks not in words of thunder, but in the silent knowing of the heart. It is the divine activity, the animating principle of your own life. It is the I of you that is one with the I am of God. You cannot find it with a microscope or a telescope. You cannot reason your way to it through philosophy. It must be accepted, felt, known, intuited in the sacred silence of your own being. When Paul said, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me, he was not speaking of a remote Savior. He was speaking of this indwelling presence, this very Spirit of God that was the core of his own identity. And when he made that ultimate mystical declaration, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me, he was giving voice to the ultimate spiritual attainment. He was not annihilated as an individual. No. His individuality was fulfilled, glorified, by becoming a transparent vehicle for the divine. The personal, I had yielded to the universal, I am. This is the great secret. This is the pearl of great price. So, when you truly understand why Jesus said, I am, you understand that he was not making a claim for himself alone. He was making a statement of universal truth. He was saying, in effect, the life that pulses through me, the consciousness that is aware through me, is not personal, not created, not born, and will not die. It is the eternal I am, and this is your true identity, too. When this truth moves from being a beautiful concept in your mind to a living reality in your soul, everything changes. Your entire relationship with the universe shifts. You are no longer a victim of circumstance, a cork tossed on the waves of fate. You are the place where God, as individual being, comes into expression. Now, this brings us to a most practical consideration. If this Christ is the reality of our being, what of the world of appearances? What of the problems that assail us? Sickness, lack, fear, conflict. The ancient prophet Daniel saw a vision of 4 great beasts, representing temporal kingdoms that ruled the world. And in our metaphysical understanding, we see these 4 temporal kingdoms as the forms of matter and the external powers that seem to dominate human life. They are the kingdoms of this world that would claim our allegiance and rule over us. The first of these kingdoms is the power of material substance. The belief that our life, our health, our security is dependent upon matter, upon money in the bank, upon the strength of our bodies, upon the food we eat. It is the kingdom that says, you are a physical organism, subject to physical laws of decay and disease. The second kingdom is the power of time and calendar, the belief that we are slaves to the clock, that we are growing old, that opportunities are lost in the past, and fears await in the future. The third kingdom is the power of external, material forces, what the world calls atomic energy, germs, viruses, economics, weather patterns, vast, impersonal forces that seem to control our destiny. And the fourth kingdom is the power of the mind itself, the human, intellectual, emotional mind with its fears, its prejudices, its reactions, its memories, which often seems to be our own worst enemy. These are the 4 temporal kingdoms, and they appear very real, very solid, very powerful. They demand our attention, our obedience, our fear. But what did Daniel see? He saw a stone cut out without hands that smote the image and broke these kingdoms to pieces, and the stone became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. My friends, that stone cut without hands is the Christ. It is not a human remedy. It is not a product of human will or intellectual cunning. It is the activity of the Spirit of God in individual consciousness. And it does not come to destroy the world, but to redeem it. It does not annihilate these temporal kingdoms. It subdues them. It strips them of their power to harm, to frighten, to dominate. It makes them servants to the enlightened consciousness. Let me give you a modern analogy. Consider electricity. For ages, it was a terrifying, unseen force in the atmosphere. It spoke in the thunder and struck with the lightning, a capricious and deadly power before which men cowered. It was a kingdom that ruled through fear. But then, through understanding, Man learned its nature. He did not destroy electricity. He could not, but he harnessed it. He understood its laws, and he made it a servant. It now lights our homes, powers our communication, and drives our industry. The power was always there. It was the understanding that transformed it from a master to a servant. So it is with the Christ. When the Christ, the truth of your being, is realized within you, it touches every aspect of your externalized world. The belief in a power in disease, in a germ, is stripped of its authority. The germ does not necessarily disappear from the planet, but it loses its power over our view. Your body, understood as the temple of the living God, as an embodiment of spiritual substance, ceases to be a fertile ground for its activity. It is not that you are fighting the germ. You are realizing a state of consciousness where the germ has no law to support it, no belief to give it life. Consider the kingdom of money and supply. The world believes in a limited source of supply. There is only so much to go around, and we must compete for it. This belief creates the very lack it fears. But when you realize the Christ as the infinite source of all, as the substance of all form, your consciousness shifts from competition to fulfillment. You are not praying for supply. You are abiding in the consciousness that A is supply. And you will find that the human channels open, that ideas come, that opportunities present themselves in the most unexpected ways. The temporal kingdom of lack is subdued by the rock of Christ, the understanding of infinite spiritual substance. And what of time? Oh, the tyranny of the clock. We are ruled by appointments, by deadlines, by the fear of being too late or the regret of time wasted. But when you touch the Christ, the eternal I am, you touch the realm of the timeless. In meditation, you step out of the stream of time and into the eternal now. And as you do this frequently, you begin to take mastership of the clock. You find that there is a divine rhythm, an unhurried pace that can govern your affairs. Things get done, appointments are met, but without the frenzy, without the anxiety. The kingdom of time yields to the eternity of the I am. This leads us, naturally, to the most important part of our work together, the practical method. How do we achieve this contact? How do we move from the theoretical understanding to the actual demonstration? The answer, of course, is meditation. Not meditation as a ritual, not as a long, arduous struggle, but as a gentle, frequent turning within. You see, the human mind is like a pond that has been stirred up by the winds of external living. It is muddy, turbulent, full of swirling thoughts and fears. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot see the reflection of the sky. Meditation is the process of letting the pond become still. We withdraw our attention from the external world, from the problems, from the news, from the chatter, and we simply become quiet. We turn within. We may use a simple truth as a focus. We may say, God is, or I am, or Thy grace is my sufficiency. But we do not bombard the silence with words. We use the truth as a gentle reminder, a pointer, and then we sink into the silence behind it. And I must encourage you to make this a frequent practice. Do not wait for one long hour in the morning or evening, thinking that will be sufficient. The human mind is too active, too easily drawn back into the temporal kingdoms. Instead, take many short periods throughout the day. Take 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Close the door of your office, sit in your car, find a quiet bench, and for those few minutes consciously withdraw. Be still. No. In these short, frequent periods you are, as I said, taking mastership of the clock. You are reminding the temporal kingdom of time that it does not rule you. You are stepping back into the eternal. I can tell you from my own experience, this is a journey. It is not an overnight attainment. I remember when I first began this work in earnest. It was not easy. The mind rebels. It wants to be active, to solve, to figure out. I would sit, and the thoughts would come like a rushing river. But I persisted. I remember it took me a good 8 months of consistent, daily, frequent practice before I began to feel a tangible shift, before the silence became a living presence rather than an empty void. And then, one day, it happened. There was an inner hearing, an inner seeing. It was not with the physical ears or eyes. It was a knowing that came from within. It was a sense of peace that truly passed all human understanding. And from that place, guidance came, not in a loud voice, but as an intuitive impulse, a gentle leading. This is what awaits you. This inner hearing, this inner seeing. It is the faculty of the Christ mind coming alive in you. It is your individual consciousness becoming aware of its oneness with the divine. And from this place, you begin to live your life. You perform your daily duties, you meet your obligations, but you do it all from a different center. You are no longer reacting from the outside in. You are acting from the inside out. The Christ within becomes the actor, the speaker, the healer, the provider. And so, my dear friends, as we bring our time this evening to a close, let us remember the ultimate goal. It is not merely to solve a particular problem, though problems will be solved. It is not merely to find peace of mind, though you will find a peace the world cannot give. The ultimate goal is dominion. Dominion over all the aspects of human life. It is to live in this world, but not be of it. It is to walk through the valley of the shadow of death and to fear no evil, because you have come to know that the I Am with you is the only power, and this includes the final transition from this plane of existence. The world calls it death and fears it as the great enemy. But when you have come to know the I Am, you understand that there is no extinction. There is only progression. The caterpillar does not die when it becomes the butterfly. It fulfills its nature. So it is with us. The consciousness, that is the I Am, cannot be put into a grave. It sheds the physical form as effortlessly as you would take off an old coat, and it moves forward into greater and more expansive expressions of life. So I say to you, be encouraged. There is no hurry. Do not be anxious if your progress seems slow. Spiritual maturity is what counts, not longevity or the appearance of youth. It is the depth of your realization, the steadfastness of your abiding, that matters. The Christ is already established within you as your own being. You are not trying to get it. You are learning to let it flow, to let it live your life. Let us just be still for a moment now, in the warmth and fellowship of this truth. Let us rest in the quiet assurance that we are not alone, that we are not separate, that the very life we are living is God's life, individualizing itself as you and as me. I am because He is, and because He is, I am. And this is our peace, our fulfillment, our eternal dominion now. We have learned, and yet we are always learning, are we not? For this truth is not a static thing, a tablet of stone to be memorized. It is a living water, and we are but cups, and each time we come to it, we are filled anew, according to our capacity in that moment. So let us come to it again. Let us deepen our communion with this ever-present, ever-available presence of God. The first thing we must realize, and realize until our very bones know it, until our blood sings with it, is that this presence is not a reward for good behavior. It is not a prize given to the spiritually elite. It is the very ground of your being. It is the is-ness in which you live and move and have your being. You cannot be outside of it, any more than a fish can be outside of water. The fish may not have a philosophical understanding of water. It may not even be consciously aware of the water, but the water is its life, its medium, its reality. So it is with you and God. Your ignorance of this fact does not change it. Your fear, your doubt, your sense of separation, these are like the fish believing itself to be in a desert. It is a terrifying belief, but it is not the reality. The reality is the ocean. The reality is the all-encompassing presence of I am. And this is why the time of trouble is the time of opportunity. When the storm hits, when the diagnosis comes, when the financial structure seems to crumble, that is the very moment the fish is most acutely aware of its predicament. And in that acute awareness, if it is wise, it stops thrashing against the imaginary sand and remembers the water. It stops trying to create water through its own efforts and instead yields to the water that is already there, that has always been there, supporting it, buoying it, giving it life. Your problems, you see, are not calls to frantic action from the standpoint of the personal self. They are calls to remembrance. They are alarms sounding to wake you up from the dream of separation. They are the tolling of a bell that says, remember who you are. Remember what you are. You are in the ocean of spirit. You are the ocean of spirit, individualizing itself. This is the core. This is the foundation. And upon this foundation, the man Jesus built his entire ministry. He was a way shower, a transparency. He came not to be worshipped, but to show us what is possible for every individual who yields to the Christ within. When he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he was not speaking of his physical self. He was speaking of the I am. He was saying, this consciousness that I am, this universal I am-ness, is the way out of the dream of separation. It is the truth of your being. And it is the life that is eternal. And when he said, I and my Father are one, he was making the ultimate metaphysical statement. He was declaring the end of the illusion of a separate creator God and a created man. He was revealing the infinite, indivisible oneness. Now, let us go deeper into this mystery of the Christ. The mind, the human intellect, is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. It will immediately try to take this concept of the Christ and make it into something. It will try to give it form, to give it attributes, to put it in a box labeled religion. We must resist this. The Christ is not a concept. It is an experience. It is the feel of God. It is the gentle presence that you might sense in the deep silence of the night, when the world is asleep and only the truth is awake. It is the still small voice that does not argue, does not condemn, does not advise in the way the world advises. It simply knows. And in its knowing, it is. You cannot find it by searching for it as an object. You cannot grasp it. You can only be it. You can only yield to it. It is like the air. You do not spend your life searching for air. You breathe it. You live in it. So it is with the Christ. You do not search for it. You learn to let it live you. You learn to let it be the breath of your life, the intelligence of your mind, the love of your heart. Paul understood this so perfectly. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. Look at the wording. He does not say, I can do some things, or I can do the easy things. He says, all things. What are these all things? They are not supernatural feats of magic, though to the human sense it may appear so. They are the normal, natural activity of the Christ, consciousness expressing itself on the human plane. It can harmonize a diseased body because the body is its own manifestation. It can open a channel of supply because all substance is its own essence. It can bring peace to a troubled situation because it is peace itself. It can do these things not as acts of power over something, but as acts of recognition of its own self in every situation. And then Paul goes even further to the very pinnacle of mystical realization. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. This is the surrender of the personal sense of self, the carnal mind, the adversary. It is not a destruction of your individuality. It is the glorification of it. It is the personal self stepping aside and saying, not my will, but thine be done. And in that stepping aside, you discover that God's will is not some external force imposing itself upon you. It is your own true will. It is the will of the Christ for your fulfillment, for your joy, for your freedom. The personal, I, was always a false claimant, a shadow pretending to be substance. When the light of the Christ shines, the shadow disappears, not by being fought, but by being revealed as nothingness. You discover that you have not lost yourself, you have found yourself. The limited, fearful, possessive I dissolves into the infinite, fearless, loving I am. This understanding, this realization, is the rock cut without hands that Daniel saw in his vision. It is not a human philosophy. It is not a new psychology. It is a divine activity, born of spirit, and it comes into your consciousness to deal with the 4 temporal kingdoms. Let us examine these kingdoms more closely. for they are the very stuff of our daily human challenges. The first kingdom, the kingdom of material substance, is perhaps the most pervasive. It is the belief that life is contingent upon physical conditions. We look at our bank account and we see our security. We look at our body and we see our health. We look at our pantry and we see our supply. This kingdom has us in a state of perpetual servitude. We work to acquire matter. We worry to protect it. We fear its loss. But the Christ, the rock of truth, reveals that matter is not substance. It is the shadow of substance. True substance is spirit. It is the invisible, formless essence from which all form flows. Money is not substance. It is a symbol. The substance is the divine idea of supply, of circulation, of infinite resource. When you touch the Christ within, you are touching this substance. You are not praying for money. You are abiding in the consciousness of infinite supply. And from that consciousness, the necessary forms appear, sometimes as money, sometimes as an opportunity, sometimes as a canceled debt, sometimes as a new idea. The form is unimportant. The substance is everything. The temporal kingdom of lack is subdued not by getting more of its currency, but by realizing the currency of heaven, which is spiritual consciousness. The second kingdom, the tyranny of time, is a subtle and cruel master. It tells you that you are too young, then too old. It tells you that your opportunities are in the past, that your powers are waning, that death awaits you at an unknown hour. It creates anxiety about the future and regret about the past, robbing you of the only reality there is, the eternal now. The Christ is the eternal now. Before Abraham was I am. When you go within in meditation, you step out of the stream of time. You enter the timeless realm of being. In that stillness, there is no past, no future. There is only the vibrant, pulsing, infinite present. And as you practice this, you bring that timeless quality into your daily life. You begin to live from a place of divine unfoldment. Things happen at the right time, in the right way. You are not rushed because you are not governed by the clock. You are governed by the rhythm of the Spirit. You take mastership of the clock. By realizing that time is a servant to consciousness, not the other way around. An entire lifetime of spiritual progress can be made in a single moment of clear realization. The kingdom of time has no power over the I am. The third kingdom is the belief in external, material powers. This is a vast kingdom encompassing everything from germs and viruses to weather patterns, economic cycles, and even atomic energy. The world believes these are powers in their own right, that they operate according to impersonal, physical laws that can harm or help us, regardless of our state of consciousness. This is the great deception. The Christ reveals that there is no power apart from God. A germ has no power to impose disease upon a spiritual idea. A storm has no power to harm the temple of God. These things are part of the external picture, the world of effect. But cause is always in consciousness. When your consciousness is anchored in the Christ, you are not standing in the world against these forces. You are realizing a state of being where these forces have no law to support their destructive activity. It is not a fight. It is a realization of harmony. You do not deny the appearance. You deny the appearance power. You see it for what it is, a temporary formation in the human scene without divine authority or reality. You harness these forces as we harness electricity by understanding their true spiritual nature and bringing them under the government of your Christly consciousness. The fourth kingdom is perhaps the most intimate and the most difficult to subdue, the human mind itself. This is the realm of your own thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your reactions, your subconscious drives. It is a chaotic, often contradictory inner world. It can be a fountain of creativity or a prison of fear. This mind is the carnal mind, which is enmity against God. It is enmity not because it is evil, but because it is based on the premise of separation. It believes it is a self-contained, independent entity. It is the seat of the personal I. The Christ is the rock that smites this image. It does not do this through suppression or analysis. It does it through displacement. You do not heal a negative thought by fighting it. You heal it by letting the Christ thought, the thought of peace, of love, of truth, occupy your consciousness. You still the human mind through meditation, and in that stillness, the Christ mind is revealed. It is already there, waiting. It is the silent witness, the aware presence behind the chatter. As you abide there, the chaotic thoughts lose their fuel. They arise, but they find no lodging place. They are seen as impersonal, fleeting phenomena, not as the truth of you. The kingdom of the carnal mind is subdued when you no longer identify with it, when you can say, I have a mind, but I am not that mind. I am the consciousness that is aware of the mind. Now, how do we make this practical? How do we move from the glorious theory to the living reality? The bridge is meditation. But I must be very clear about what I mean by meditation. It is not concentration. It is not a mental exercise. It is a gentle, patient, persistent yielding. It is a letting go. Let me share with you a little more of my own journey. When I first began, I, like many of you, thought meditation was something I had to do. I would sit down, close my eyes, and try to force my mind to be quiet. It was a battle. The more I tried to silence my thoughts, the more they seemed to multiply. I would end my sessions more frustrated than when I began. It was a period of great struggle. I remember it took me a good 8 months. 8 months of daily, faithful, and often seemingly fruitless effort before there was a breakthrough. And the breakthrough came not when I finally succeeded in silencing my mind, but when I gave up the struggle. I realized that the peace I was seeking was not something I had to create. It was already there, underneath the noise. My job was not to be a warrior against my thoughts, but to be a gentle host to the silence. So I changed my approach. I began to sit not to achieve silence, but in the faith of silence. I would take a simple truth, like God is love, or I am the place where God shines forth. I would not repeat it like a mantra. I would just hold it gently in my awareness like holding a precious jewel. And then I would listen. I would listen not for a voice, but for a feeling. I would feel for that gentle presence. At first, it was just a moment here and there, a fleeting second of pure peace before the thoughts rush back in. But I cherished those moments. I did not condemn myself when the thoughts came. I just gently, without judgment, returned my attention to the feeling of presence. And then, one day it happened. It was not dramatic. There was no lightning bolt. But there was a shift. It was as if an inner door, which had always been slightly ajar, suddenly swung fully open. The silence was no longer an absence of sound. It was a palpable presence. It was a living, loving, intelligent silence. And in that silence there was a knowing. This is the hearing. It is not auditory. It is a direct impartation of truth. A problem that had troubled me for weeks was suddenly solved, not by a process of reasoning, but by a flash of understanding that came from within. This is the inner seeing. You see the truth behind the appearance. You see the spiritual reality where the human sense sees only a problem. This is what is available to you. This is your birthright. And the key is frequency, not duration. The human mind is like a wild animal. You cannot tame it by confronting it for 1 hour a day and then letting it run wild the other 23. You must call it back to heel frequently. Take those short periods throughout the day. Before you pick up the phone, take 1 minute to be still and know. Before you walk into a meeting, pause at the door and remember the I am. When you feel a wave of anxiety, instead of feeding it with more thought, close your eyes for 30 seconds and touch that gentle presence. In these moments, you are not neglecting your duties. You are performing the most important duty of all. You are establishing your government. You are reminding the 4 temporal kingdoms who is master. And as you do this, your life will begin to change. It will not necessarily become a life without challenges. But the challenges will be met from a different level of consciousness. You will find yourself responding with a wisdom you did not know you had. You will find a resilience that is not your own. You will find a compassion that understands because it sees itself in everyone. The fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance will begin to appear in your life, not as qualities you strive to exhibit, but as the natural fragrance of the Christ within coming to the surface. This is the ultimate goal, my dear friends. It is dominion. Dominion over the physical body so that it serves as a harmonious temple for the spirit. And its final transition is understood not as a defeat, but as a glorious graduation. Dominion over your world so that you walk through it as a master, bringing light, harmony, and healing wherever you go. Dominion over your own soul so that you are at peace in the midst of the storm, joyful in the face of the world's sorrow, and abundantly supplied in the midst of the world's belief in lack. So, I leave you with this reassurance. There is no hurry. Do not look at your neighbor and compare your progress. This is an individual journey. tailored by the infinite wisdom of the Christ within you. Spiritual maturity has nothing to do with the calendar. A heart open to grace can accomplish in an instant what years of struggle cannot. There is no extinction. There is no death. There is only the infinite progression of the I Am unfolding itself in new and more glorious expressions of life eternal. You are safe. You are held. You are one with the Father. Let this truth settle upon you now, not as a thought, but as a feeling. Let the gentle presence of the Christ fill this room and fill your heart. Be still and know, I am, and because I am, you are.